Okay. All right, everyone. Let's go ahead and get rolling. A couple of logistics to start. I will send you a link to this recording of this presentation, so there is no need to take intense notes. Secondly, we're going to cover a lot of material today, and we're going to move pretty fast, so I highly recommend that you put all of your focus into the webinar. I know that it's easy to multitask when you're on the computer, but I am a firm believer that single tasking is the best way to really learn something in a short period of time. Also, if you have any questions, please put them in the box to the right of this presentation, and I will address as many as I'm able at the end. If you're watching the replay later, then you can still put your question there. It will notify me with an email, and I will be sure to get back to you. If I don't get to your specific question, don't worry. Someone from my team or I will personally follow up with you and make sure that your question gets answered. So, without further ado, let's dive into the subject at hand. Search engine optimization, also known as SEO. All right. First things first. Why should your business care about SEO? Why should you, given all of the other marketing tools available to you, spend the time and effort to optimize your website for greater visibility in search engines like Google and Bing? I can count on one, maybe two fingers, the number of small business owners who complained about having too much time and too many resources at their disposal when it came to marketing. In other words, most of you have few extra resources, and so you're very protective over how you use them. You don't have a lot of time or patience for experimenting with new strategies or testing unproven theories. You want to invest your money where it'll have the highest return. I get it. Hey, I'm a small business owner too. Well, I submit to you that you can't do much better than SEO, and I'll tell you why. 93% of all online experiences begin with a search engine. 97% of consumers search online for local Memphis businesses, and, well, not all local for Memphis, but you know what I mean, local businesses. And finally, the majority of web traffic is driven by the big three search engines, Google, which is about 2/3 of the market share, and they are followed by Bing and Yahoo. And all of these stats tell a pretty straightforward story about how business is conducted in the digital age. Given that so much of our attention, or excuse me, our interaction with brands happens online, it's no surprise that businesses are spending a lot of time and money trying to boost their visibility on the web. And SEO is one of the best ways to do that. And I say best because it's effective, it's affordable, and it's also proven. So let's dive deeper into the who cares question. Maybe you're wondering why you should invest in SEO when you can just run ads and leapfrog to the top of the search listings. Well, that's one approach, but it's typically a very costly one. But the bigger flaw in that approach is simply that it's less effective. People aren't as likely to click on sponsored ads. And when they do click on sponsored ads, they're still less likely to actually buy. 77% of searchers choose organic over paid listings, and 67% choose organic search results when purchasing. Even more important, organic click-through generates 25% higher sale conversion than pay-per-click ads. As you can see, organic results, the unpaid listings, are where it's at. If you can get your website to show up in the top of the organic results, you're essentially in pole position as a business. More buyers will see your website and become customers. Have you seen the movie Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger? It's one of my favorites. It's a good movie. This is what a search engine results page looks like to the dreadlocked alien in Predator. So this is, I mean, what you're looking at on this slide is a heat map of a search engine results page. Otherwise, it's also known as a SERP, S-E-R-P. And this reveals what people look at when they perform a search on Google. And as you can see, most of their attention, almost all of it, is focused on the top left of the page. This area is known to SEO experts as the golden triangle, and it's golden because if your website shows up within it, you're going to get a majority of the visitor traffic for that particular term, and that's going to mean big money for you. When you optimize for search engines, you're trying to show up in the golden triangle, not just on the first page, but at the very top of the first page. Another question I want to address up front is whether SEO is a legitimate form of marketing. Some will say it's just a sneaky way to game the system, to cut corners, or trick the search engines to giving your website a ranking that it doesn't deserve. And I'm here to dispel that notion. SEO is in fact legitimate. Well, to clarify, it's legitimate except when it isn't. So you see, there are two different kinds of search engine optimization. First, I'll talk about black hat SEO, and not surprisingly, this is the bad kind. Black hat SEO is what gives all SEO a bad name. It relies on spammy, high-risk strategies that test and routinely cross the boundaries of ethical behavior. Now, black hat strategies are high risk because Google and other search engines, they exact tough penalties when they catch people using them. They're constantly working on catching these guys to make it good for everyone else. They won't hesitate to permanently ban a website from their directory altogether if they think that you're using black hat tactics. So in the past, there were some black hat tactics that worked really well, and there were plenty of unscrupulous consultants who would sell their SEO services to small businesses and apply these tactics. A lot of otherwise honest businesses got burned in the process. They'd get in trouble with Google and they would have no recourse. These unscrupulous black hat wearing SEOs, they'd just walk away looking for another mark. And as Google's ranking algorithm has become more sophisticated over the years, it's definitely much harder to have success with black hat techniques. And it's also much easier to get caught. Google devotes an enormous amount of its time, and I mean enormous amount of its time and operating budget to not only blunting the efforts of spammers, but catching them too. And regardless, largely because of the early days of the web, which was a bit like the Wild West, the notion that SEO is unethical or sleazy has persisted to the present day. Before I advance to the next slide, I'd just like to call attention to how creepy the photo is on this page. Okay. All right, so let's talk about white hat SEO. And yes, this is the Dalai Lama you're looking at here. If His Holiness were a search marketer, he'd surely engage in white hat SEO. In other words, plain old SEO. And I have no idea where our designer found an image like this, but it's pretty awesome. With white hat SEO, you don't have to worry about any karmic payback. It's ethical, and even the almighty Google gives it the green light. In fact, it might surprise you to know that Google itself is one of the best sources of information on SEO. And that should tell you something if you're still concerned about SEO's legitimacy. Google happily helps webmasters and business owners try to improve their positioning in the search results. Okay, now we're going to segue into the next section, how search engines work. Before I go any further, it's time for a brief disclaimer. From here on, we're going to get a little wonky. There's nothing to be scared of. It might seem like an unnecessary academic exercise to explain how search engines work, but I promise you that there is a practical reason for understanding the basics. So here it is. If you know how search engines work, you're in a much better position to understand how to build a site that ranks well. Does that make sense? So here we go. We're going to start with crawling and indexing. Okay, some of you may recognize what this picture is, and some of you may not even have a clue, depending on when you were born. This is a picture of a card catalog system used by libraries to organize all of the books on their shelves. So it makes it easy for a visitor to find the book that they're looking for. Well, that's what the search engines are doing. Search engines have armies of automated robots, and they are commonly called spiders, and they, quote, crawl through many billions of web pages. They crawl through images, through videos, and through documents that comprise the web. And once the spiders find these pages, they analyze the code, and then they organize, otherwise known as they index, selected pieces in massive hard drives in ginormous data centers to be pulled up later when a user punches in a search query. So this explains how a Google search takes only a fraction of a second. They already have a copy of the entire World Wide Web stored on their servers, so they can show you what you want very quickly. Nobody has to wait. The next important thing that the search engine has to decide is which piece of content out of the billions and billions that they have indexed, which one gets shown to you when you do a search. So how do the big search engines decide who gets top placement? Basically, it boils down to two criteria: relevance and importance. Relevance is somewhat straightforward. Does the page talk about the user's query, or does the page talk about the user's search term? Does that search term or keyword show up on this page? How many times does it show up? And where? In the headline? In the body? In the URL? All of the above? The second element, importance, is a little trickier, and this is where Google and others have to make more of a judgment call. In this case, Google takes a democratic approach. They look at which site gets the most votes. In other words, gets the most links. Google interprets a link as a vote of confidence for a website. If a site has a ton of incoming links, Google takes note and gives that site a better position. However, this is not a pure democracy. Some votes count more than others. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. All right, for now, it's critical that you understand why the search engines are doing all of this work. And basically, it boils down to this. Google wants you to be happy. Google wants users to be happy so that they return again and again and again. And click on a few ads every once in a while. Because if people aren't happy with the quality of their search results, they lose faith in Google's ability to deliver useful information, and they're going to go elsewhere. And so Google's going to lose advertising dollars. This is a good example of a company's priorities lining up with their users. Google truly wants to help you find the information that you're looking for. Their future profitability depends on it. Okay, so that's a very high level of how the search engines work. Now let's look at the other side of the equation, how people, just like you and me, use the search engines. And this part is very important. A huge part of a successful SEO strategy is getting into the mind of your customer and understanding their wants, their needs, and their motivations. You have to temporarily step outside your role as seller and occupy the role of the buyer. And this definitely isn't as easy as it sounds. But if you don't, you'll have a much harder time being successful. At this point, search engines play such a big role in our lives. It feels like they've been a part of our life forever. We forget to step back and think about how exactly that we use them. But it's worth thinking about the various steps we take when we conduct a search online, because it's actually pretty involved. And by thinking about these steps, you'll be more able to empathize with your customer and tailor your SEO efforts accordingly. So, it all starts with a need for an answer, a solution, or some other bit of information. To get there, we formulate that need in words and phrases in our head, and then we enter that keyword or search term into the search engine. We then browse through the results for a match, clicking on a result that looks promising, judging by the small amount of text that's given to you. Then we scan that page for a solution or a link to that solution. If we don't find what we're looking for, it's back to the search results. And if nothing else looks promising, we start over, performing a new search with a new keyword search term that might yield a better result. In order to train your brain to think like your customer, you're probably going to have to temporarily abandon some of your biases, your habits, your shortcuts. Let me give you an example of what I mean. So there's an entire industry of businesses that specialize in providing ongoing support to other businesses that don't have or can't afford their own internal IT department. These businesses call themselves, quote, managed service providers because they provide, quote, managed IT services to other businesses, and they call themselves MSPs for short. But here's one thing. No one else calls them managed service providers or MSPs. They're known to the world as IT people, computer support guys, geeks. No one who needs help with their broken computer is going to Google, quote, managed service provider. Whatever industry or niche you're in, you've probably adopted its language and its customs. But for SEO purposes, you need to also adopt the language and customs of your customers. If your messaging isn't optimized for them, you're not speaking to them. You're just speaking to your colleagues and competitors. Needless to say, that is not going to help you. So if you take one thing from this webinar, I want it to be this. Build for people, not for Google. Build for people, not Google. Okay, say that with me right now. Build for, no, I'm just kidding. All right. It's important that you know this, and it's important that you know that this is the bedrock principle of good SEO. Never lose track of the fact that you're trying to reach people. They are the people who buy your products and services. Okay, so we've talked about how search engines work and how people use the search engines. Now let's go into how you can design and or modify your website to improve its visibility. And the stuff I'm going to talk about in this section is mostly invisible to the people that visit your website, but it's critical behind the scenes stuff, and it's really important to the search engines. So one of your primary goals when doing SEO is to make it easy for the search engines to find and index your site. And it's a little bit technical, so I promise not to spend too much time on it. Okay, first, it's important to understand that search engines don't look at web pages the same way a human does. For starters, search engine spiders are image blind. They can read text, but they can't see graphics, photos, illustrations, videos, not yet anyway. Google is hard at work trying to remedy this, but it's probably going to be a few years before the spiders can interpret the content of an image. Until then, you need to make sure that your site is conveying enough text-based information so that the spiders can successfully determine whether your site is relevant for a given search term. If most of your website's content is non-verbal or image-based, you're not giving the spiders much information to go on, and it's going to be much harder for you to rank for your preferred terms. This is a big mistake that a lot of businesses make with their websites. They just want them to look pretty, so they put big flashy images but not enough text. And this virtually guarantees that your site won't rank well. Spiders are unlike us in that they can't see images, but they are very much like us in that they follow links when they visit a website. So if the pages in your site are not linked together in a clear way, the spiders won't crawl through and index your entire site. The content in these unlinked pages, those are also called orphans, they won't get indexed, which makes it harder for you to make a case for relevance. One of the surest ways to make sure that all of your pages get indexed is to have a good link navigation structure that promotes easy crawling. Another way to help the search engine spiders is to use robots, specifically like the robots.txt file, which gives instructions to search spiders. By using robots.txt, you can tell search engines which areas of a site they should and should not crawl, making it easier for the search engines to find your good content. Next are what are known as sitemaps, and sitemaps are another tool that you can use to make life easier for Google's overworked spiders. A sitemap is a list of files that essentially gives hints to search engine spiders on how they can crawl your website. They help search engines find and classify content on your site that they may not have found on their own. Again, the easier you can make life for the spiders, the better your chances of ranking higher in the search results. Another great way to help the search engines is to, quote, ping them anytime you create new content for your site. When you publish content, it's always a good idea to make sure that you notify or ping the major blogging tracking services like Google, Technorati, Yahoo, similar stuff to that. Doing this will let the search engines know that you have great new content, and it's going to increase the likelihood that your site will get indexed again and climb the rankings. The nice thing is that there are a lot of tools and services out there to automate this process, so you really don't have to do anything. Once you set it up, then you post new content, they're going to automatically get notified. How you structure your URL is another important thing to consider. The URL is the, quote, address of your website, and the structure has an impact on the spiders, and it also has an impact on your human readers. In general, you want your web pages to have URLs that are short, static, not dynamic. You want them descriptive and hyphenated if they are on the long side. Why is shorter better? Well, it's easier to read for one thing. It's also easier to remember and easier to share. Also remember that your URLs actually appear in the search results, and if your URL is too long, it will appear truncated in the results. Also on this slide, you'll see in red an example of a dynamic URL structure which doesn't provide much in the way of description. It's not very helpful to humans or spiders. Static URLs, like the one in green, are better because they communicate more information and they won't change over time. If you want your URL to be descriptive of the content that is on the page, that is helpful to both the search engines and to your visitors. Lastly, to use hyphens, not any other character, to separate words in your URL. Hyphens are the most commonly used and understood separators. On this slide, you'll see an example of a URL from copyblogger.com that has all of these important attributes. Okay, so those were some of the more technical things that you can do to help your site rank higher. And most businesses don't pay attention to any of those things, and their rank suffers because of it. Okay, moving right along. Now we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about the ins and outs and do's and don'ts of content creation as it pertains to search engine optimization. All right, the most important, and I want to say that again, the most important thing about creating content is that you realize that ultimately it's real people who buy your stuff, not the search engine spiders. You can only get so far if you focus all of your efforts on persuading Google. In the end, you've got to persuade a flesh and blood person to take action. Thus, it is worth repeating, write for people, not the search engines. Okay, content is still the undisputed king of the internet. Without good content, you are not going to get very far in your efforts to improve your visibility. You've got to make a point to create compelling content that your customers will find useful, timely, and engaging. And I want to clarify one thing. There is a difference between engaging content and link bait. Link bait is a term used to describe content that exists purely for the purpose of getting clicks. And this kind of content is the junk food of the web. It's high in calories, but it's low in nutritional value. And it doesn't drive the kind of quality traffic that you should be aiming for. So focus on creating high value content and not link bait. So great content starts with keyword research. And keyword research is one of the most important activities in SEO. After all, search all begins with words that your customers type into a search box. So ranking for the right keywords is the ultimate goal of search engine optimization, because ranking for the right keywords will help you draw the right visitors to your website. For example, the people who are ready, willing, and or able to purchase your widgets or your services. Thus, keyword research is absolutely critical if you want to maximize the return on investment of your optimization efforts. Okay. There are several things to consider when choosing which keywords to focus in your website. The starting point, of course, is relevance. If you sell vacuums, you're going to focus on vacuumy keywords, for lack of a better word. But relevance is just one of many considerations. You also need to consider the volume of searches and the competitiveness of a given keyword. You need to think of the intention behind a given keyword. Let's go through an example. Consider the motivation behind the keyword cheap vacuum compared to the term best vacuum. Let's say that you specialize in selling high-priced Dyson machines that are so powerful that you have to make sure your tiny little lap dog isn't in the room when you're vacuuming because it's going to suck it up. you're, you're obviously going to want to optimize for the term best vacuum because that's what you're selling. If you optimize for the other term, you're going to draw a lot of unqualified traffic to your site. People who can't afford, they don't need, or they don't want what you sell because they're looking for a cheap vacuum. Does that make sense? That sounds pretty basic, and it is. But you'd be surprised to learn how often businesses pick keywords simply because they're high in volume, even when less used keywords would drive higher quality traffic and result in more conversions, for example, sales. The next important thing when creating content is frequency. And what I mean by that is you want to create new, fresh content for your visitors and for the search engines. And search engines know that information is changing daily, and they want the most up-to-date information. So it dispatches spiders to crawl and index every web page it can find. But here's the rub. Google will not recrawl your site if it thinks that your content is stale or hasn't changed. And if your site isn't being crawled, it sure isn't moving up the ranks. It's probably moving down, and it gets displaced by sites with fresher content. So it's super important that you give Google a reason to return to your site on a regular basis. That means regularly updating your site with new content, including text, images, and videos. Speaking of videos, if you aren't using it to market your business, you are missing a huge opportunity. There is a ton of empirical evidence that video is an effective way to climb the rankings in a short period of time, even in highly competitive industries. And this is due in part because Google classifies videos separately in the search results. So get filming. You don't need to have a film degree from NYU to make effective videos for your website. Just be yourself and try to offer some good, useful, or entertaining information to your audience. It's one of the things we do here at Memphis Web Guys. We do the 10 by 10 by 4 traffic formula, which you can always contact me and ask me about that. That's a very effective way to use video. Okay, another way to get your content noticed is to create lists. You've probably noticed this already. The internet is made up of lists, lists of lists, lists of lists of lists. And there's a good reason for this. Google likes this format, and so do humans. You know, since the 10 Commandments and probably long before them, we've been creating lists. Maybe we like them because they tell us in advance what we're going to get, and they're transparent and direct. Whatever the reason, I encourage you to create content that fits into this structure. It will help your SEO efforts a great deal. Okay, let's get a little geeky, and let's talk code for a second, specifically meta and title tags. And these are two very important pieces of HTML that you should pay attention to when creating and posting your content. Every page on your website should have a unique and descriptive meta and title tag. And the meta tag doesn't actually display on the page, but the search engines display this text in the search results. So it should provide good intel for spiders. And it should also be compelling to readers because they're going to use it to decide whether to click through to your website. Now, the text in the title tag gets displayed in two places. In the search listings, where it's the blue clickable text, and at the top of the browser window. It's a good idea to include any relevant keywords in your meta and title tags. But again, err on the side of lower keyword density. You don't want to look spammy. So you don't want to have the meta tag just totally full of your keywords, and it doesn't make any sense. Another piece of code that's very important is the quote alt tag, ALT. And it's used to identify pictures. And as I said earlier, spiders are image blind. So you need to describe images with words in order to ensure that your images get properly identified and indexed by the search engines. And the alt attribute is where you do this. Most content management systems make it super easy to edit the alt attribute of an image. On this slide, you can see the HTML code for an image of a smiley face. Note the alt attribute. Even though this is very easy to do, it is one of the most underutilized tools on the websites. Okay, now we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about off-page optimization. This is the part of SEO that is a little trickier, but it's also very effective. It's trickier because you can't directly control all the levers. All you can do is indirectly influence them. So if you recall, Google determines the rank of a page based on two key factors: relevance and importance. And its algorithm determines importance by measuring the popularity of a page, which in turn is determined by the number of quality links, which are like votes, pointing to it. So one of the best ways to demonstrate your importance to Google is to acquire inbound links to your website, but not just any inbound links. Links from other websites that the search engines see as very credible, that are known as authority sites. Back in the day, a link was a link in Google's eyes. Today, Google is more discriminating when it looks at links. If the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal links to your website, Google will be very impressed, and you'll probably see a bump in your rank. However, if Joe Sixpack links to your website, Google's going to be less impressed. You won't see a bump in your position. Thus, building relationships and credibility in your industry and your marketplace is a very worthwhile endeavor, because relationships and credibility result in, you guessed it, inbound links. Needless to say, there are excellent reasons to nurture relationships and to build your credibility that have nothing to do with SEO. It's just good business sense. But know that your efforts in this department will also pay dividends in the SEO department. So here's a link building strategy that is growing in importance as Google begins to incorporate the social web into its algorithm. For a long time, Google's algorithm didn't give much weight to links that came from social media, like Twitter and Facebook, but that is changing very fast. Now, in an effort to present fresh, timely information to users, Google has begun to give social media links more weight, and this is a great development for website owners. Not only can you drive traffic and encourage sharing of your content with social media, you can also see a ranking boost because of all those inbound links. So you want to make sure that you are making it easy for people to refer you on the social networks by including social sharing buttons along with your content. Another proven way to increase website traffic is to start a blog. And according to this study here, HubSpot, business blogging leads to 55% more website visitors. That's pretty significant. And there are a lot of people out there who think blogging is a waste of time, and you might be one of those people, but I submit to you that blogging is still a great marketing tool. For one thing, content-rich educational content is still king, and a blog is an excellent platform to publish and organize your content. Also, Google loves blogs, particularly ones that get updated frequently. So the blog could be a part of your regular website, or it could be an entirely separate site, depending on how you want to set it up. But it's going to give you an additional piece of real estate on the web. All right, the last thing I want to mention in this section is directories. And directories are places on the web where you can get your website and your business listed. Directories are great for SEO purposes. They offer an opportunity to get inbound links, for one thing, and they also help search engines and searchers gain more confidence in your website and business, as they often have real customer views on these directories. So it's a win-win. All right, we've covered a lot of ground here, so I'm going to keep moving quickly so that I don't take up too much more of your time. All right, so here's the deal. SEO is not a silver bullet. It can be hard, and it can be time consuming, and sometimes results don't come as quickly as you'd like, but SEO is worth the investment, and the data proves it. People testify to it. In fact, a Merchant Circle survey of small business owners asked if you had to put all of your marketing time and budget into only one channel, what would it be? Their answer, SEO. SEO is considered the single most important marketing channel for small businesses. All right, overwhelmed? Don't be. You can use SEO to improve your visibility and draw more buyers to your front door. And know this, we are here to help. If you'd like to discuss potential SEO plan of attack for your business, please feel free to get in touch. You can always come to our website, memphiswebguys.com. We have a way right there at the right where you can leave us a voice message, or you can chat with us. We're online most of the time during business hours, during the day. And you can also sign up for our other webinars there. Okay. Let's open the floor up for some questions. We have some in the queue. All right, let's see the first one here. Is buying or trading links a good link building strategy? That's a good question. As for buying links, I think you should spend your money elsewhere. Largely because buying links is gaming the system, and SEO is not about to get, it's not about getting a boost that you don't deserve. You're better off building links the old-fashioned way. Create relationships and offering great content so that people are naturally inclined to link to your site. As far as trading for links, this is definitely not worth your time. No one knows exactly how Google's algorithm works, but there's a good deal of evidence that it can detect link swapping schemes, and it doesn't necessarily penalize people who appear to be trading links, but the evidence shows that it doesn't reward it at all. Okay, next question. What tools and resources do you recommend? Google has a ton of great webmaster tools that are free. These are really the only must-have tools in the SEO world. As for educational resources, there are a ton of great websites out there. SEO Moz is one of my favorites. Search Engine Land. It's another heavyweight that's got big readership. Okay, here's another question. Can you help me do keyword research? You bet. Like I said earlier, just get in touch with me after and we can schedule a time to discuss. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here. thank you so much for joining me today. And again, if you'd like some assistance putting these tips and strategies into action, we'd love to help you. Just get in touch. Take care, and thanks again.